Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. In this video, I want to go over the 7 new Uber bosses and just give you a high-level overview of what to expect in each fight. Not necessarily going to go into all the nuances. In the background, you will have footage of my very comprehensively failed first attempt at the Uber Shaper over on Standard. So, the Shaper has 200% more life. This is in addition to the increased life that you would get just by virtue of being in a tier 18 zone instead of tier 17. So it's about 320% of baseline Shaper hit points. Other than the actual Shaper fight, there's no apparent changes to the arena. It looks like all of the zones outside of the Shaper fight are the same. The Slam does a lot more damage and appears to me to have a larger AoE than it does in the core Shaper fight. The Beam and Slam can overlap in time. Now, I've run a little bit of an analysis on exactly what's happening with the Shaper Slam frame by frame, looking at playback. And it looks like he can do the first 1 second of casting the Slam while he is still shooting the beam. Death comes 1.85 seconds after the first particles telegraphing the Slam appear on screen, and this is 0.85 seconds after the teleport occurs. Now, as you can see in the background, projectiles have LMP, and 2 clones act in the same way as the Shaper. I've not been able to figure out what causes the clones to appear and disappear. They seem to have a pretty high uptime, but they're not always there. The Shaper will cast Bullet Hell, and Zana is not there to protect you. This is included in Phase 1 of the fight. In Phase 1, you'll get a milder version of it. Phases 2 and 3, the kid gloves come off and it's nastier. The individual bullets don't do devastating damage. They do hurt a lot, and you will see me die to it in the background, but you'll also see me survive taking a few hits from it as well. It hurts a lot, but the individual shots don't kill you. It's getting it 1, 2, 3 punched by a few shots that's going to be what kills you here. Now, the thing that's really important to note that's really a big difference from the core Shaper fight is that bad stuff on the ground remains between phases. So too do unpopped balls. So if you've got balls that are chasing you around that you haven't yet popped, or if you've detonated them, then those ones will remain in the arena in exactly the same place for the next time that you fight the Shaper. The phases are still the same. When you get the Shaper down to 50%, he'll send you off into Oubliette, and then that will happen again at 25%. He'll start healing while you try to run your way back through. Okay, so Sirus is next. Sirus is arguably the hardest of all of them. He has 200% more life, as well as a boost for being level 85. Bad ground will clog up everything, and you've got to kill him fast. Slow and surely is not a valid approach in the Sirus fight the way that it would be in the Shaper fight. Assuming, of course, that you can execute slow and surely very well. The earlier phases have a storm in the middle of them. This seems pretty manageable. It does follow you slowly, but it also doesn't seem all that bad. The spinning negation beams split the arena in 6 instead of 4, and they stack their debuff much faster. But the thing that's really changed and really deadly, well actually the 2 things that have really changed the most, after spinning negation beams is cast, Sirus's die beam is wider, and it's also more damaging. This thing is a real wrecking ball, and will definitely kill you on a lot of characters, even ones that can just face tank the normal spinning negation beams. Secondly, the Meteor phase is brutally fast. This is balanced around really fast movement speed. Like, we're talking Mage Blood speed movement, and you're going to have absolutely no mistakes if you don't have a Mage Blood level movement speed. Maven comes next. Maven has only 100% more life, so about 210% of base life once you factor in that she's also a higher monster level. Bad ground again persists the entire fight, same as in the Shaper. Cascade of Pain has lesser multiple projectiles and is really deadly. The other thing that's really surprising, she has an ability, I term it Yeet Balls of Fire, where she throws one big ball of fire at you in the normal fight. And this ball of fire does scary damage, but it's not deadly. Well, that ability is getting buffed. Yeet Balls of Fire fires 5 projectiles instead of 1, and any single hit seems to kill players unless they have ridiculous defenses. Like, we are talking really serious defenses, far beyond what players would normally have at endgame. So it definitely does at least 30,000 base damage. So you probably want to have at least 85% fire resistance for this. She may also pick the target location she's firing Yeet Balls of Fire at a little bit later in the process of casting it than she normally does. I'm not sure on that. Now, the bosses spawn in Maven phases as well as the Nucleus phases. The Laser Rake inflicts a healing debuff, and I'm unsure, but I suspect there might be a bias toward harder bosses. I don't know about this, it just seems like it from what I've seen, but I'm very open to being wrong there. Eater of Worlds. Eater of Worlds has monsters take 70% less damage instead of there being an increase to monster life. Perish Beam repeats twice, and it can be used almost immediately. So the Perish Beam doesn't usually come online until the Eater has taken a bit of damage in the normal fight, but that comes online pretty much immediately. Maybe it's 100% life, maybe it's 95% life. This thing goes from being a scary moment in the normal game, where it just knocks you from full life to a quarter life, to something that will definitely kill you if you get hit by all three of them, or even by two of them, you're in a bit of trouble. Now there's the cancel of slam by energizing the spheres phase. This has writhing tentacles in it as well, and the seeking laser appears to be faster. There seem to be fewer orbs at higher life for the boss, that is, and higher numbers of them at lower life, but it may be some other mechanic. It may just be +1 each time. Now the biggest change though is that the hunger slam is massive. We are talking screen wide. So you'd be familiar with the Eater of Worlds slam where he says, "Hunger," and flies over to you and leisurely donks the ground and does devastating damage in a maybe a 2/3 of a screen radius. That is much bigger. The radius on that is enormous. It doesn't even seem like it's just 70% increased AoE. It seems like it's much more again than that. Searing Exarch is next. Also has a 70% less damage taken by monsters. Now the firewall seems to be normal. The Annihilation skill, which is sort of his lightning tendrils, except it's fire, that thing is harder and it's faster. The balls phase can be entered at higher life totals than it can in the normal game, or on the normal version of the fight. And each time you go into the balls phase, there is a Molten Minotaur that is conjured. This is a unique monster that seems to have a fairly big chunk of life and makes slow melee attacks. It doesn't look all that dangerous, although I might be underestimating it. It may depend on your character's defenses. Cortex is next. Cortex has 200% monster life on top of its usual mods, which are also random. Now with the Cortex, you'll be fighting two of the bosses at once. So first round, you will be fighting the Altered Synthete and the Fractal Gargantuan together. Second round, you'll be fighting Synthete Masterpiece and Augmented Synthete. Then there's the Intermission. The Intermission phase is harder due to monsters having Arch Nemesis mods, so that's likely harder on normal Cortex as well. Now, one thing that's important with the Intermission is that the monsters do not despawn when the time runs out on it, nor does the next phase pause. You may well find that you enter phase 3 while you still have monsters from the Intermission phase alive. Phase 3 is the Fractal Titan and the Twisted Synthete. Phase 4 is the Rewritten Synthete and the Synthete Nightmare altogether. So this is basically a little bit harder than usual, but really doesn't seem all that different to maybe Maven's Invitation of the Forgotten, except that you have the Synthete Nightmare at the end. Don't think that this is all that difficult in comparison to the rest, and my guess is that this is probably the easiest of the 7 if you're wanting to get started on any of them. That said, other people have said Shaper they found the easiest. Uber-Elder is next, and this one looks like a bit of a doozy as well. 200% life again. Elder's Exploding Annulus has Spell Echo, so instead of just conjuring one Annulus that you've got to get into the safe spot of, the Eye of the Storm, or get outside the entire thing, there'll be multiples. Shaper has less multiple projectiles again. The Shaper casts Bullet Hell, but rarely. Not as frequently as you're seeing it in the Shaper fight in the background. And the voice cue for that is Ultimate Chaos. The Shaper Slam does not look empowered like it is in the Shaper fight, although I am not sure on this. The Elder's Slam wind-up looks a lot more painful than usual. So you might be familiar with the Elder having a slam where it's basically mechanically very similar to the Shaper Slam, except it's a little bit easier to dodge. And when he's winding up for it, he spits out a whole bunch of sparks. Those sparks look to do a lot more damage than they do in the normal game. I'm not sure about that, but that's my impressions from watching other people do the fight. Additionally, the Madness Propagators seem more durable and they seem to act faster. So they're the little things that put the physical damage over time goo on the ground. Anyway, that's all I've been able to figure out so far from having a look at a bunch of people attempting and succeeding at these fights. May your Valorps have interesting results, and I will see you around.